On the last Sunday of the month, at least the last Sunday that I speak, because next Sunday is Ben, but the last Sunday of the month, we have a hymn song. And so tonight we'll play that role. And tonight, the song that we're going to be looking at is Sing Me of Heaven. And I rarely ask you to do this, but I'll ask you tonight to get the songbook that is in front of you. If there's not one in front of you, then you may have to just imagine one being there, I guess. But turn to number 716. And on page 7, or on song number 716, you'll see this song, Sing to Me of Heaven. And you'll notice down at the bottom that it was written by Ada Powell and written in 1914. And normally this is the time where I would give you some stirring biographical information. I would tell you that this person did this or did that or did something else. But the reality is there is no information. In fact, I read something today that the author said they believe it was a woman because of the name, but there's not even any proof that it was a man. They don't know anything really about who Ada Powell was. But Ada Powell wrote this song 110 years ago. But maybe that's for the better, because maybe the words are better suited to discuss than the biography. Maybe that biographical sketch can wait till next month for the next song that we cover. But what we can say is that over a century ago, what was presented, what was written, still resonates. I'm going to say this to start. Heaven has a reputation. And we know what a reputation means. And sometimes people have reputations based on experiences that you have with them. But sometimes reputations are based on things that we maybe know or think we know, but we don't necessarily have experience with it. Heaven will be one of those things, right? So for all of us, heaven has a reputation. Heaven has a description. We find some sort of vague descriptions at times in the Bible. We find some more specific descriptions in the Bible. You know the song, I've Got a Mansion Just Over the Hilltop? That is another hymn that's a description of heaven. But what's a mansion? Well, a mansion to me might be different than you, right? And a mansion that was, when that song was written, during the middle, I believe, of the Great Depression, might have been different for that person than it would be today. The point of this is there's a reputation of heaven. And it's the positive of death, right? It's the alternative of bad. I'm never going to fuss at anyone or contradict anyone who wants to give a description of heaven. We have no description, but I've never seen heaven described in a bad way. So whatever that mental picture is that you have, if it doesn't match the person who's over here on the other side, that's okay. Because we're imagining something far greater than anything we've ever experienced. But our level of imagination might be different. Our views might be different. But tonight, we're going to discuss a few situations in which we think about heaven. Situations in where heaven might come to mind. And I want to start by looking at the first verse. The first verse says, "Sing to me of heaven, sing that song of peace. From the toils that bind me, it will bring release. Burdens will be lifted that are pressing so. Showers of great blessing o'er my heart will flow." Now, I think all of us would agree that that verse lays out pretty well the challenges, the difficulties, the toils and labors that we come across, right? But heaven is a place prepared for us to rest eternally. We can all relate to those days at work where the clock is moving backwards, right? I am working like crazy. I've been working at this, and it looks like we have cleared 5 minutes since I started doing this, right? We can all relate to that. And how many of you have ever said somewhere around 2:30, man, I cannot wait to go to bed tonight? Some of you may have said it earlier in the morning than that. Like when you woke up, it's like, boy, I can't wait to go to bed tonight, right? Well, we like that rest. Well, our life is this toil and this challenge and this labor and this difficulty. And it's comforting to know that heaven, whatever it is in your mind, whatever you're envisioning is, it is a place of rest. Not just sleep, but a place of relaxation, right? A place to sort of comfort ourselves knowing that I don't have to do anything, right? Isn't that what it's like on Friday at 5 o'clock or whatever? It's like, whew, I don't have to do anything until Monday. Now let's go mow and let's clean, all those kind of things that we have to do as well. But with this notion of rest, Revelation chapter 14 in verse 13, we read, "Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, right, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them." Let's think about that in a couple of different ways. Blessed are those who die in the Lord. So if we're in the Lord and we're there, then that means that we've got a home in heaven when this life is over. So while we might be worried about death because we think about death in this negative way, it's nice to know that there's a comforting place for us, right? But that doesn't just say that at the end of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 13, that they may rest from their labors, that their works may follow them. So those works that we've done, those good deeds, that effort, that labor that we've done gives us that reward afterwards, right? We don't have to worry about that anymore. You have work to do. You need to help others. But once we've passed on, we don't have to worry about that anymore. We all have burdens in this life. Galatians 6:5, what does it say? Each one shall bear his own load, right? You ever heard that? We have to bear our own, and then we talk a lot about helping each other, but there are some things that I can't help you with and that you can't help me with. There are some things that we have to bear on our own, but it's comforting to know that there are people behind you that are there supporting you, even if they can't lift that burden, that they can help you along the way. But thinking of heaven releases our minds at least a little bit from the troubles, the challenges, the difficulties that we face. So what about the second one? Think of heaven when we are alone. Verse 2 in the hymn. "Sing to me of heaven as I walk alone, dreaming of the comrades that so long have gone. In a fair region, among the angel throng, they are happy as they sing that old sweet song." Have you noticed the older you get, the more names you recognize at the funeral home? And mom and dad always took us to hide it from us. But we went to the funeral home to see people who were related to somebody who was related to somebody who was related to somebody else. And there were times when we went and we was like, well, me and Jess knew each other and we didn't know anybody else. Well, they were older relatives or had lived out of state or out of the county or whatever. But now it seems like the older I've got, the more people I know, the more names I recognize. And I'd say you all are the same way, right? And we recognize the names of those people. That's distressing, perhaps, but it's not new. Hebrew writer wrote in chapter 9 and verse 27, right, that it was appointed to man once to die, and then after judgment, people have been dying since the first day. I don't know how many people have died in the history of the world. They'll sometimes do that, scientific figures of how many people die. It's an unbelievable number. But we know that that's what's going to happen to us. But we can be comforted by the hope that their souls are in heaven. That's why I had Kevin read what he read there just a moment ago in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 4, or 1 Thessalonians 4, am I right on that? Verses 13 through 18, something like that. Y'all know how it is. If there's a 1 and a 2 in it, I just get it all mixed up. That's just how we've all agreed to that. But what Kevin read, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 through 18, there's a comfort there in what we read, right? It says, do not be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. And what Paul is saying right there is that I don't want you to be worried about that. We can worry about a lot of things. And he said, I don't want you to be worried about that. And then he goes on to say sort of how it'll work, right? The Lord will descend and we'll be called up and all that. But verse 18, at the end of verse 17, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. And that's verse 17, but there's another verse 18 as well. And it says, therefore, comfort each other with these words. And I think that's a good thing to look at right there. That when we're alone, or when others are alone, when others are suffering or struggling with these difficulties, we can comfort them with what we hear. That while that person who has passed on can cause us worry and grief, we shouldn't be. They're there. And we can be comforted knowing that they're there, but also that we can be there as well. And not only that, what Kevin read there by Paul said, we got you taken care of if you die or if you're alive. If you're alive, you'll be called up as well. So you don't have to worry about maybe this sort of separation. Separation is on earth. Separation is not when you go to heaven. That is not there. Maybe it's a greater comfort, like we said, Revelation chapter 5, verse 11 and 12. The writer wrote, then I looked and heard the voice of many angels around the throne, the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice. We've talked about those numbers from time to time. That's a massive number, right? But what he's saying is that all these people are there. Let's go to verse 12 there. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And so we can see there that those people who have gone on, I know that the book of Revelation was written, it's a vision, as it were, maybe, but it's a vision that maybe you have as well. What is your image of heaven? Well, it might be all those people that you know who have passed on, sort of gathered around that throne singing, right? Well, we're here singing tonight, sing to me of heaven, right? Let me fondly dream. They don't have to dream about that, right? Sing to me of, I don't know if it sounds as good, sing to me of heaven, I'm already there. That doesn't really make sense, right? But we can think about it in that way. What's another time maybe that we can think about heaven? Well, what about when our hearts are weary? Tenderly and low, till the shadows o'er me. When the day is to me of heaven, sing that old, sweet song. Psalm 90 and verse 10, we read the psalmist say that the days of our lives are 70 years. And if by reason of strength they are 80 years. Yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off and we fly away. We're guaranteed nothing. At best, we could hope for 70, maybe 80 years. Some of us may far exceed that number. Some of us won't. That's why they do averages, right? It sort of balances out about where it is. But we know that there will come a time someday for each of us, right? There will come a time for each of us when the shadows rise and they're quickly gone. What James said, right? He said the same thing at the end of your Bible. So that life was but a vapor, right? It appears for a short time and then vanisheth away, right? That's what we see when we look at the obituaries each day. I don't say that to be worried or concerned, but that's part of it. That's what we've been promised. And it's during that time, though, that the heart grows a bit heavy, right? It's during that time that we get weary. It's during that time that the song said the days are long. But heaven is a place where we reap our reward. Paul told the Galatians, chapter 6 and verse 7, he said that whatever man sows, that he will also reap, right? So if I'm told that there's chance, an opportunity for me to go to heaven, then I'm going to start sowing now so that I can reap when this life is over, right? And I can be comforted in knowing what this life presents. Your songbook has 3 verses for this song. It's 110 years old. This, I believe, is the 18th hymn sermon that I've presented. And I've avoided it for some time. As you all know, some of you know, this was Wilma's daughter, Dad and Tony's niece, my cousin. It's her favorite song. And I've avoided this because I knew it'd be difficult. Courtney was senselessly killed 15 years ago next month. And I miss her all the time. But I'll be honest with you. There are times when I close my eyes and I think about her. And I'm a little teary right now, but the reality is when I close my eyes and think about her, I never really cry. Because I always think Courtney was 3 years and 3 million days older than all of us. She knew everything that me and Jess and bless his heart, her brother John, we were all Jess was pretty smart. John and I were just dumb as rocks. We didn't know anything. And Courtney had to lead us through everything, and she had to tell us everything, and she had to fuss at us when we did wrong, and she was the boss, but she loved us more than anything in the world. And every time I ever saw her, she'd hug me and she'd kiss me. The reality is I can kind of still smell her, if that makes sense. But I think about her quite often. And I know that we've looked at verses tonight that tell us we can't see her or whoever our loved ones are on earth again. This is not the way it works. But we can be comforted by the fact that in this life, with all its burdens, with all of its loneliness, with all of its weariness, we'll see each other again. The chorus of the song says, "Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its pearly gleam. Sing to me of heaven sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me of heaven, sweetest song of all." I knew it'd be difficult to talk about this tonight because it means something dear to me. But it means something dear to all of you all as well. You all have people in your life that were gone way too fast. And even if they were 80 years old, it was still too fast. But we've seen tonight that our task is to comfort, to love, and to help each other. We have to bear these burdens, and some of them we have to bear alone. But we need to be making sure that our arms are big enough to wrap around every person in this building and every person we come in contact with. Because when we think about this hymn, when we think about this song, we're singing about a place that we'll finally get to be together again. But there's no expiration date. There's no average. There's no time in which heaven ends. You know, it doesn't say you'll be in heaven for 6-month trial period or 10 or 15 years. But the Bible says an eternity. And that's hard for us to even fathom. But I'd like to think that the time that we get to be there together, the time that we are there, whatever we can imagine it to be, I know who's there with me. I love each of you all, and I appreciate you working with me on this evening as well. If there's anything that we can do for you, we always invite you to come. Make sure your home in heaven is reserved as well. If there's anything we can do, we invite you to come while we stand and sing.